Hi guys, welcome to another bowling video. So if you've watched my previous video, I've compared like a typical house shot versus a sport shot, which I used the Singapore Open's oiling as the example of the sport shot. So in this video, I'll go into a lot deeper detail as to how I would tackle the Singapore Open oiling personally. But then again, obviously, you have to put a disclaimer first, is that if you're watching this and you are one of the competitive bowlers, if you are like competitive bowler in Singapore, like from one of the academies and so on, your coaches from the academy are probably gonna already have like strategy or plan laid out for you. I would strongly suggest for you to follow your coach's plan first, because they know your game the best, because you've been training with them for like years on end, right? So the plan that they laid out for you is probably catered to suit like the lines that you usually play, your ref rate, your ball speed, like your like basically what kind of lines you're most comfortable with. So obviously, I would strongly suggest for you to follow your current coach's advice first. Follow their plan and put trust in the plan, right? Try not to doubt it, because if you doubt their plans and you don't execute to your fullest, you're not gonna get no one's gonna get no one's gonna benefit from it, right? Because you're gonna score. Because if you doubt it and you doubt your shots, you're not gonna execute to the best of your ability. And I think, yeah, as a bowler, you're gonna be the ones that's most disappointed. So if you can follow the coach's advice, and only if you don't find it to be working, and then you can look for alternatives. Right, just listen to whatever I say in this video with a huge grain of salt, right? Because you always listen to your current coach's advice first, because they know your game the best. Okay, so that being said, disclaimer out of the way. The Singapore International Open will start, I believe, in, let me just Google for the website, right? Let me just get the Singapore Open website. I believe in 3rd December. So from the 3rd to the 17th of December, for that 2 weeks, there will be the Singapore International Open. So it'll be one of the big Asian tournaments as well. And this is the oiling pattern that's already released on their website, which you can download from there. So for example, how you get it from there is you go to singaporebowling.org.sg. You click on the banner for the Singapore International Open. So once that's loaded, just scroll down. You see that there's a rules and regulation, tournament schedule, price table, handicap chart for seniors, overseas squad booking form if you're from the overseas, and what's the oiling pattern is like, and the averages if you're bowling in one of the graded divisions. If you're bowling in the open division, the average doesn't really matter. Okay, so you can get the oiling pattern from there. So this is what I've downloaded. First and foremost, you look at the distance, right? So it is a 42 feet oil pattern, so that is of average length. We call it medium length oil pattern, right? So usually what we would, closer to the longer patterns, I'll still say is really medium, because the medium one is anything from 42 to maybe like 40, even 45 or 44 I would consider it still medium. Longer patterns will be from like 45 and upwards. That means obviously 50 to 45 I'll consider them to be longer patterns. And then anything that's shorter than 40, that means 39, 38, 37 to 32 will be the shorter patterns. So this is right smack in the middle, medium oil pattern, right? 42, medium. Generally, Singapore Bowling Federation likes to lay out medium patterns for their international opens, because it is just one of, how should I say, the most versatile conditions. It allows the most angles, like you can play from straight down the outside, like you can play straight down the outside, you can play deeper on the inside, and both it allows for most versatile area of play, so it accommodates the most bowlers, right? It doesn't really shut out any particular kind of style. You can be a spinner, you can be a hook bowler, you can be a two-handed bowler, you can be like a straight ball bowler, and you would still be able to bowl on this oil pattern, right? So because they want to like accommodate the most number of bowlers, is mainly kind of like to make it popular as well, so that most people will be able to get a decent score on it. Then they want to get the most number of participants, so they put a medium oil pattern out. But this year the difference is that they made this oil pattern really thick as well. So it's 33.6 milliliters in total, and that's pretty thick, because most of the sport patterns would be around 20-ish. For example, let's Google for Okay, I'm gonna Google for, let's say, Tokyo, right? Tokyo oil pattern, right? USBC Tokyo, this is that. So we had this, I think, a few years ago. Tokyo pattern was actually one of the patterns that you used for the Singapore Open a few years back. I think pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. So this was only 27 milliliters, right? And maybe let's look at the official Tokyo, WTBA Tokyo from ABF. Yep, then you can see here, the official WTBA Tokyo pattern was also a medium oil pattern at 43 feet. So very similar to what the Singapore Open has laid out, but it's only 26.2 milliliters. So it's a lot less oil as compared to what they're going to lay down on today, which is hole 33, right? So it's whole like almost 6 milliliters more. But anyway, it's really thick oil. So this is going to factor into the surface of the balls you're going to use. Generally, the thicker the oil, the rougher the surface you want to use. So I would like suggest if you're bowling on the fresh, like you start out with like really rough grit. I don't, what's the allowable grit, right? Let me check. USBC ball surface rules. Yeah. So let's see what's the roughest surface that we can use, right? I wonder it is altering surface by user. Okay, be clean. Commonly asked questions. What is the lowest allowable grit for USBC? Lowest surface. Lowest grit surface. Nope. Altering surface. Rule change. Okay, I think we can research about this later because it's gonna take too much time for me to research. But anyway, the roughest that you can use, for example, if you can use like 320 grit on your bowling balls, then I would suggest you can start with 320 grit if you're bowling on the fresh, especially if you're a lower ref rate bowler. If you're a higher ref rate bowler, if your ref rate is anywhere like from above 300 to the 500 ranges, then I would suggest slightly lower grit, like maybe 500 grit to 500 grit. Like if 1,000 grit, I think 1,000 grit you're probably gonna be like using it for the transition already. You probably want to start with a really rough grit so that your ball can like get some decent traction. But of course, it's a disclaimer that I've never bowled. No, this is wrong. This is wrong as well. Let me close off this or this. Right, bring it out of the way. Nope, so that I don't get confused. Okay, so the total disclaimer is that I have not bowled on this oil pattern before, so I'm not sure what is the surface grit that would actually provide traction on the ball. But anyway, just judging based on the oil volume, I would suggest like the rough grits that I mentioned earlier. Okay, so going down to the details, let's talk about the shape of the oil pattern. So you can see the shape here. It is 3.6:1, that's the ratio. So it is decently, it has some decent allowance, I would guess, because really flat patterns would be like 1 point something something. Like if I look at the WTBA Tokyo, WTBA Tokyo was 2.7:1. So that gave a little bit less allowance, but you can see that this is 3.6:1. So this is like skirting the edge of a sports pattern, right? So because what they would normally determine as a sport pattern is that they give a limit of 3:1. So anything above 3:1, sometimes I don't know which organization, whether is it USBC or maybe WTBA, would not consider it a sports shot anymore. So this is like on the edge of a sports shot. So this is going to give the most allowance in terms of classifying it as a sports shot, and that's generally going to mean higher scores. So you're going to see a higher scoring pace for this tournament. But you can see that 2.77 for the lefties is to 1 on the left side. So the lefties are going to have it a little bit of a tougher time because they're going to have a little bit less ratio. The oils are a little bit thicker on the left, but it's hard to say whether the lefties will be scoring well or not because generally lefties play a little bit tighter, they don't really, like, if I were to draw a line for the typical lefty, it would be something like this, right? Going straight down into the pocket. There are very little lefties that will play this kind of line, like a very deep inside out line, or like lines like this, because they will be cutting into the lines of a right-hander in the deeper, like when on the burn, right? When, let's say, you're on the third squat and so on. So very few lefties going to play such a deep line. So most of the time, the lefties are going to play in the straight line. So the ratio is not really going to like affect them as much as a right-hander, because most right-handed bowlers, especially the higher ref rate bowlers, they have to bowl like inside out lines like this, or at least lines that cross the boards like in this area. So they're going to cross, the right-handers are going to be crossing a lot more boards. So the ratio is going to, this ratio is going to give right-handers a little bit more allowance on the right. So generally speaking, you want to play in the area of the slope. So you can see here the slope comes from anywhere from board 15 to board 5. So board 15 to board 5, if I were to like look up, board 15 to board 5 would be anywhere from 15, I think it's here, board 15 to board 5. So this whole area, right, gives a significant amount of allowance, right? This whole area, so whether your ball crosses from here to here, or here to here, here to here, so you get the benefit of that room for error in this area. So it's going to give the right-handers quite a fair bit of allowance there. And yeah, it's probably going to lead to higher scores as well. Where would I start with? Like, it really depends on your ref rate and your ball speed. But obviously, for such a thick amount of oil, right, my strategy would be to use like a really rough ball, a really rough, maybe asymmetrical ball, or if you are a very high ref rate two-hander, or even like a thumbless one-handed with like 500 ref rate or like 400-ish ref rate but slower ball speed, then you might want to play. I forgot my train of thought. But anyway, yeah, you're gonna start on the right and you're gonna keep to the right as much as possible. Main reason being is that you want to like break down the oil on the outside as much as you can. So in this area, 42 feet, I would say the break point ideally should be about, no rule of what, 31, 33, about 12, 13. But if I look at the break point can range from anywhere, because since this slope is so generous over here, your break point can be anywhere from like board 10 to like board 12 all the way to board 6 as well, because you get the benefit of a slope in all of these areas. But I would say generally speaking, probably around here, like anywhere from boards 8 to boards maybe 13. Boards 8 to board 13 as the break point would be ideal, which means the break point would be somewhere boards 8 to board 13, right? So we draw, this is 8, this is 13. So the break point is about 45 feet around this area, right? So anywhere around this area will be the ideal break point. And yeah, so you'll be playing, maybe I can zoom out a bit. So this area will be ideal break point board 8 to board 13. So roughly around here. Oh, no, that's too far down. Yeah, 45 feet. So it's roughly around here, right? So this area will be your break point. So any of these boards, it doesn't have to be like a really specific break point. So let's say if I'm going like the edge of this area, right? So probably like board 8, then the lines I'll be playing will I would start, if I have a little bit of high ref rate, I'll start playing maybe a little bit diagonal, landing the ball at around probably 10. Yeah, 10 to 8, play a really tight line. And then from here, let it hook to the pocket. So the pocket line is here. And then as you transition in, so use a really rough ball for a start, like really low grade surface, like 320, 500 for a start. Probably a solid reactive ball. And whether you use asym or symmetrical, I think it's really up to your own personal preference. A lot of one-handed bowlers will probably want to go with an asymmetrical ball, because the asymmetrical ball is probably going to roll earlier and help them get like start earlier in the mid lane and help them get better control, right? Because if you are using a symmetrical ball and you don't have enough ref rate, or you have too high of a ball speed, your ball is going to skid through the whole of the oil, especially if it doesn't have enough surface in rough enough surface. You're going to skid through and you're going to skid past the break point, and the ball is not going to hook. So probably an asym ball. So asymmetrical ball is probably recommended for a start on a fresh. And then as you move in, obviously you're gonna make as small adjustments, just like moving in like 2-1, that means shift 2 with your feet, and then just one board with the arrows, and make really tight adjustments like something like this, right? And you're gonna cross your original line towards the breakpoint. And then as you move in, again, make really small adjustments, another 2-1 as you shift in. So you're gonna stay in the same area with the same breakpoint as much as you can. Since the oil is really thick, so that means it's gonna take more shots before your oil breaks down as well. So yeah, you can probably stay in the same area of the lane for a lot longer. So what most people are, especially if you're a high ref rate bowler, most people are concerned with like big changes. Like for example, they are afraid that they have to move in like this if they are playing deep inside. Then this is generally not, I don't think this is a recommended line for this oil pattern, because the oil is so thick, there's a chance that you totally miss the breakpoint and your ball just goes like dead straight into the gutter. So, like especially if you miss to the right, because it's so thick here, your ball doesn't gain enough traction and it just goes straight into the gutter. There's a pretty high chance of it doing that. So I would probably say that this kind of deep lines is not recommended. You probably want to like just keep the target lines pretty close. Breakpoint should be around here in this area, right? Yeah. Keep your target lines pretty straight. Then the most you should transition to is probably like playing around between third and fourth arrow. Oh, ground one. Let me draw a line between third and fourth arrow. So lines probably like this. Then you can obviously shift your breakpoint in if you find that your ball is not hooking as much. So if your ball doesn't have like that sharp of entry angle, then you can probably shift the breakpoint a little bit in, like probably towards board 10, or like maybe even further in, like board 12, right? Shift breakpoint to board 12 as well. Then that is provided that you don't have that sharp of entry angle, you have more forward rotation. Definitely I would suggest for bowlers to use, just like what I mentioned in the like house shot versus sport shot video, definitely try and use more forward rotation on your release if you are a bowler that's good enough to control like your release. If you have more than one release and you have one with more forward rotation, I would suggest you use the one with more forward rotation, because the forward roll will allow you to control the ball a little bit better in such a thick oil, because the forward roll will allow the ball to read the lane a little bit earlier. If you have a lot of side rotation on your ball, you might struggle in such a thick oil, because like I mentioned, because with the side rotation means your ball will skid further. And if it skids too far, there's a high chance that it might totally skid past the breakpoint. Like you can throw a shot and it totally goes past the breakpoint before it even starts to hook. So it goes past the breakpoint because of that high axis rotation, that high amount of high angle axis rotation, and then you might totally miss the pocket. Okay, so definitely use more forward rotation for this oil pattern. Anything else I would like to say? Should you use urethane? I don't think so. Should you use pure urethane on this oil pattern? I wouldn't think so, because in this oil pattern, the scoring pace is going to be high, right? And because there's such a generous slope from here to here, like this there's quite a lot of room for error with this slope provided on this oil pattern. Scoring pace is going to be high. If you're using a pure urethane ball, you might struggle with your generating entry angle, and you might not score high enough for you to even qualify for the master qualifiers. If you're playing in the open division, I'm probably looking at like a 230 average, because they're taking the best of 6 games, so probably a 230 average or 235 average just to qualify for the master qualifiers. So I'll probably be seeing scores as high as like 240, 250 average, because since you're taking best of 6 games, probably plenty of like 700 plus series. Like we'll probably even see some 800 series and so on in this tournament, because yeah, it's going to be a high scoring pace, and we are using a pure urethane ball with that lack of entry angle, because you're going to be playing lines. If you're using pure urethane, you're going to be playing lines that are really like direct like this, and with such a thick oil, I don't even know whether the pure urethane ball can read enough. Like you probably need like 320 grit on your pure urethane ball. And yeah, it's just not a good idea, I think, in general, because your pure urethane ball, unless you're like striking like 9 out of like you're striking like 8 frames on every of your games with a pure urethane ball on this in this tournament, then I'll say you stay with your pure urethane. If not, I would suggest for you to use a solid reactive ball. Or should you use per reactive balls? Per reactive balls, probably not. Maybe like if you're going really late in the burn, let's say, because this is a schedule, right? And you can see that they're gonna play 3 blocks of master qualifiers before they do lane maintenance. Let's scroll over. So there are like three times that they oil the lane early in the morning, right before 9 a.m. Then another one in like from 12:30 to 2 p.m. The other lane maintenance timing is from 6 p.m. All the way, from 6:30 p.m. Sorry, this is from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. This is from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. There's a lane maintenance. So they're going to maintain it 3 times. So unless you're like playing in this last block, right? That means you're playing on the burn. I really wouldn't suggest for you to use like a pearlized surface ball, because if you're using pearl surface balls on such a thick oil pattern, your ball might not read the lane at all. Like it might miss the breakpoint, like I mentioned. It might skid all the way, because obviously a pearl surface ball is designed in a way that lets you skid through the front a lot better, because it's very polished surface ball. So yeah, might not be advisable at all to use any of your pearl balls. You might want to keep it at home. Maybe just bring one, like if you're planning to play on the burn. But other than that, I think solid reactive balls will be the way to go. Higher surface, lower surface grade, that means rougher surface, will be the way to go. Maybe you can plan like have different surfaces prepared. So according to for surface as well, I noticed that one of the rules for this tournament, I don't think it's written here. Let's read the rules and regulations, right? Maybe I can download it. Rules and regulations. Give me a moment. Okay, I'll bring it over. So in the rules and regulations here for the Singapore Open, let's check for lane movement, squad schedule, surface. Tie breaking. Oh, wait, what? Oh, okay. Sorry, yawn. So altering the ball surface is only allowed designated area during official practice. Altering of bowling ball surface is not allowed. Oh, wait, they changed this. Altering a bowling ball surface is not allowed during or in between games. So if the surface, they adjusted this rule. So when I saw the rules and regulations earlier, right, I think in late October, the rules was that you are allowed to alter the ball surface in between games. But now you can see that they added this rule: altering a ball surface is not allowed during or in between games, which means only during practice. So practice means this. So let's go back to the this is pretty big. So this rule changes our strategy quite a fair bit, which means you're only allowed to alter your ball surface in this section right before your master qualifier starts, right? Then once you start your master qualifier, you were bowling 3 games, right? So while you're bowling that 3 games from this time to this time, you are not allowed to alter your ball surface, right? So you have to either stick with the same ball, or you can change to a different ball with a different adjusted surface, but you're not allowed to adjust the surface of the same ball in between the games while you're bowling your master qualifiers. So it's the same for any of the blocks. So you're only allowed to adjust the surface here right before your master qualifier starts during practice shots. So that's a pretty big change, which means you might want to prepare your arsenal in a way that you have a few different solid reactive balls. So you're gonna it depends on which squad you're planning to bowl, right? So let's say you're planning to bowl on the fresh, you're planning to bowl on the 2 p.m. squad. So for this, you might want to have something that is like 320 grit, right? For a solid ball at the start. And when the lane transitions, you're probably gonna transition to a ball that's maybe 500 grit, and then you're gonna transition to a ball that's maybe 1000 grit, right? So this is like, so you're gonna have 3 different balls prepared. So one ball with 320 grit, maybe an ASIM with 320 grit, and then you have another like maybe another ASIM with like 500 grit, or an ASIM with 1000 grit, or you're gonna go with like a symmetrical ball with 500 grit, and then the last one you're probably gonna have a symmetrical solid ball with like 1000 surface grit. And then if you're bowling on like the second squad, the burn, so you're bowling on this one, then maybe you want to have start with a ball with like 500 grit, right, for the start, because you don't know how much the surface has changed. So you still want to get pretty like high amount of surface on it, and then you're gonna transition to maybe a second ball would be 1000, and then the third ball will be 2000, right, if you're bowling on the second squad. And then if you're bowling on the last squad on the burn, then maybe you want to start with a ball with 1000 surface grit, and then you have another solid reactive ball prepared with 2000 surface grit, and then maybe you have a shine ball, right, a pearl ball that's polished, right, polished pearl ball for for your last maybe 1 or 2 games on this block. If there's like if it's really if there's a lot of burn on the right side of on the right side track. If you're a lefty, obviously your strategy will be should I say similar? If you're a lefty, that means you're probably gonna expect less transition on your side of the lane. So if you're a left-hander, so like for lefties, I would probably like start with like a ball with 320 grit, and then prepare another ball with like 500 surface grit, and another ball with like 1000 surface grit. And then you can probably stick with the same 3 balls, like maintain the same balls, same surface throughout all the 3 blocks, right? Because you are probably, even if you are bowling on the burn, there's still a high chance that you're probably gonna play on a pair of lanes that no lefty has played before. So the oil is gonna be fresh for you. So like 320, 500, 1000, and maybe you have a 4th ball that's like 2000 surface grit. Okay, so all solid reactive balls, or maybe like some of it you can maybe mix in a hybrid, right? So like for like the ball for the burn, like the last few balls that you're gonna put like 1000 and maybe 2000, then maybe those balls will be like a hybrid surface, but you still want to have some amount of solid surface inside. So more solid reactive balls with lower surface grit, and yeah, and so on. So you want to prepare all these balls in advance, even before you start bowling your master qualifier, so that you get them ready to transition, since you cannot alter the ball surface in between the shots, in between the games. Sorry. Okay. So like if your surface is adjusted during the game, penalty is 0 pinfall. So the resurfaced bowling ball will also not allowed to be used throughout the remainder of the block, right? So they're very strict on this. If you are spotted adjusting the surface in between the games, yeah, then you get 0 pinfalls for that game, and that ball will not be allowed. The ball will be put out of play for the remainder of that block, right? Yep. Then balance holes, everybody knows about that, so I'm not gonna no balance holes. So yeah, and that's about it. So this rule is pretty important. So that plays a huge strategy into the surface strategy of your ball, what balls you're gonna bring, and so on. So like if you have a 6 ball limit, right? What are the balls that you're gonna bring? Let's see. So, alright, so let's say 6 ball limit. What balls am I gonna bring? I'm gonna bring like 3 solid reactive balls, then maybe 1 urethane, right? 1 urethane, and maybe 1 pearl ball, 1 pearl reactive ball, and maybe 1 spare ball, right? Then there will be 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 6 balls. So what if wait, where's my epic pen? Okay, so there is that. Then if or maybe like 2 reactive, right, 2 solid reactive balls. So 2 solid, right, and maybe 1 hybrid. Okay, for the transition. Then I have probably 1 urethane, because you always just want to have 1 urethane just in case. So 2, 3, 4. Then I have 1 pearl, right, 1 pearl and 1 spare ball. Okay, so that's your 6 ball limit. Obviously, if you're staying in Singapore, if you don't have a ball limit, yeah, you can bring your whole pro shop here, right? That's assuming that there's enough space for you to store balls. But yeah, this was staying within the 6 ball limit. What if you have less than 6 balls, right? So what if you only have 3 balls? So I would suggest, like, if you have 3 balls, then you bring 2 solid, right? 2 solid and one spare ball. Always have a spare ball, right? If you can, like, spare with one of your strike balls, then all the more power to you. Then some people will have, like, 3 ball limit, they can have 2 solid, right? And then they have a urethane, right? 1 urethane, which they also use it as a spare ball. Okay, so there's that too. Oh, I can use text. I can use the text tool here, right? But is this good? Solid. Yeah, this is pretty small though. The font. Can I, like, make it large? No, I can't really make it large. Okay. Yeah, so that's my Aswa strategy. And then obviously among your solid balls, so let's keep within the 6 ball limit, right? If you are like an overseas bowler. Let's see, how many asim? I would say no, if you have 3 solid balls, right? So let's say you have 3 solid balls, probably 2 asim and probably 1 sim, 1 symmetrical, right? That is within for your 3 solid balls. Then obviously if you're bringing like a pearl, maybe the pearl will be, probably you want an asim for the pearl so that it reads the lane a little bit earlier. But I really like strongly recommend against bringing a pearl ball. Yeah, unless you're gonna be planning to play the burn, right? Like the last MQ, then you probably, yeah, your pearl ball will probably come into use there. But other than that, you probably want to use solids, but with like less surface grid. Yeah, so that's about it. Any other things that I can touch on? Maybe strategy-wise regarding the MQs itself. So, oh, it's already been 30 minutes already. Yeah. So for regarding the MQs itself, I would suggest for bowlers, right, to book things like this. Always book like 6 games in a block. That means either this or like either this, right? So what you want to do is you want to queue up your 6 games together, or maybe you're gonna bowl like this, right? 6 games here, and then on the following day you're gonna bowl 6 games here. So the reason is that just more time efficient, right? Since you made you sacrifice so much time to go down to bowl the master qualifiers, you might as well bowl 6 games. Because if you're just bowling 3 games, for example, unless it's like you really can't find a slot, for example, you bowl 3 games like this, and then you have to wait for like a lot more hours, and then bowl another 3 games, then in this time period, you probably can't go anywhere, like, because there's not much recreation going on in the Rifle Range Road, right? There's not much recreation area around the area as well. There's no like shopping center. If you go back to a hotel, it's like, you have to like come back and things like that, and then yeah, so you just want to like spend your time more efficiently, so you just want to bowl 6 games, right, direct. I would recommend against playing 9 games straight, because that's quite tough. And if you're gonna bowl a lot of 9-game blocks, it's gonna be really tough on both mentally, because you're gonna run out of energy mentally, and also physically tough on your fingers, your arms, your body, and so on. Because this, you're probably gonna bowl quite a lot of games if you're like trying a lot of MQs in order to qualify. So 6-game blocks like this, book them together and like this, right? So that's my general strategy. And I will also suggest for bowlers to avoid the first MQ here. Try and avoid this. Reason being is that if you look at the lane maintenance, right? So this one goes into my theory regarding how oil flows. If you look at the chart here, so obviously there is a shape, right? Yeah, there's a shape when the pattern is laid out. But the longer, because oil this is not a gel, right? It doesn't stay fixed because it is still oil. So even though the oil is given a certain ratio, the longer the oil sits, right, the more the oil, like the thick parts of the oil will flow to the side. It will flow to the areas with less oil. So it will flow the longer the oil sits there. And if you're talking about the first MQ, the first block, especially the first like 9 AM block, the lane maintenance is probably going to be done a lot earlier than 9 AM. Like the staff are going to probably reach there like 7 AM or maybe even 6 plus. I don't know, like what's their operating hours like, but they're probably going to arrive a lot earlier than 9 in order to do the lane maintenance for so many lanes, right? And so yeah, so the longer the earlier that they do the lane maintenance, the more time the oil is allowed to just sit on the lanes, and then more time the oil is allowed to sit on the lanes, the more the oil will flow from the thicker parts to the lower volume areas, right? And this makes the oil flatter, right? It flattens the shape of the oil pattern. So if you're a competitive bowler, you probably understand that the flatter the shape of the pattern, the tougher the pattern plays. So that means if the oil is allowed to sit for like 1 hour or half an hour before you throw your first shot on it, maybe it might no longer be 3.6:1. Maybe it might flow to like 3.0:1. Then maybe it might flow to like 2.5:1, because a lot of the oil has flowed from the center to the sides. So yeah, so that's my theory on it. So I don't know how true it is, but just my theory on how the oil will flow. So the longer the oil sits, the flatter the pattern. So you might want to avoid bowling the 9 a.m. 9 a.m. block, because the pattern is probably going to be flatter on the 9 a.m. because the oiling is going to be done earlier. It has more time to sit and it has flowed to the sides. It became flatter. Okay. Any further strategies I have in my mind? Yeah, probably that's it. And yeah, as usual, the disclaimer at the end again is that if you're one of the academy bowlers, one of the youth bowlers under academies, if your coach has already laid out a strategy for you, what balls to use, what lines to play, and so on, please try and follow your regular coach's advice first, and do not doubt their advice, because they are the coaches who have spent the most time with you, like years training with you. They know your game the best. They know what lines you usually play, what balls you usually use, what's your ref rate, what's your axis tilt, what's your axis rotation, and so on. So the plan that they design is probably catered to suit you the best, right? So try and follow their laid out strategies first, and then if that really doesn't work, then if you are like really desperate, then you can maybe like try some of my advice or some of the other bowlers' advice or other coaches' advice, and so on and so forth, right? But always listen to your regular coach first, follow their advice first, okay? And that's it. If anyone is interested to look for me for coaching, my contact details are down in the description, in the video description. And if you're overseas bowler, if you're overseas and you like to look for coaching from me as well, through Zoom, yeah, you can also contact me through WhatsApp and through all my other social medias there. Then we can always arrange a time where I can coach you through Zoom. That means while you're bowling on the lanes, and then I'm watching your form behind you, and I give you immediate critique and advice. Okay, so that's about it. Thank you very much for watching, and we wish you guys the best of high scores and good luck in the Singapore Open. Thank you.